The fork slipped from my fingers before the meaning of his words even reached me. "You'll sign the house over, right?" A ripple of laughter moved down the table, tight, practiced, like they were all in on the same joke. The chandelier buzzed above us, catching on the wine trembling in my hand. I set the glass down slowly, intentionally. "No," I said. Silence snapped across the room. Someone hissed my name like a warning. My mother's pearls clicked as she shifted away. My father's jaw locked. And then stillness. Only the faint hum of the light and the drip of wine from the overturned glass onto the floor. Then he spoke again. "Then Sue will." When I was 8, the sound of shattering glass never alerted anyone but me. Randy would slam a door, knock something down, and I'd sweep up the mess before our parents came home. He'd call me his cleanup crew and laugh until I forced myself to smile. That was our pattern, his chaos, my quiet. At 12, he wrecked my bike into a mailbox. Dad replaced his that same day. Mine stayed bent and rusting for years. I pretended it didn't hurt. It always did. At 16, I became the one fixing everything. The leaky sink, the cabinet hanging by a single hinge. Mom would walk by, coffee in hand, saying, "You should have been born a boy. Then you'd be useful." Randy would smirk over his cereal, tapping his spoon like applause. That sound used to follow me into my dreams. When college came around, Randy failed twice and still got a new car. I graduated early and got a toolbox. Dad said it suited me more than a desk job. By 25, I'd given up on the idea of fairness. Only one person ever saw me differently, Grandma. We'd sit in her garden, and she'd point to roots breaking through the dirt just to reach the sun. "You're like that," she'd tell me. "You don't shout. You just grow through concrete." I didn't understand it until she died. The will gave Randy a trust fund. I got her journals. They all acted like that was perfectly balanced. Those journals taught me how to rebuild things others abandoned, old furniture, cracked walls, myself. That's how I found the house. A 1920s craftsman collapsing under its own memories, ignored, cheap, unwanted. I put everything I had into it. Every paycheck, every weekend, every quiet breath. Whenever a wall split, I patched it before anyone could notice. Once when my parents visited, Dad snorted, "You're going to burn out fixing that dump." Mom nodded. "At least Ree's doing something that matters." I handed them coffee and mugs I had made myself. They didn't finish either. When they drove away, I watched their car disappear, dust swirling in its wake. The house groaned, but it stayed standing. I told myself that was enough. For years I thought staying quiet meant keeping peace, that endurance was a kind of love. But one winter night, sitting on the floor with raw hands from sanding the same step for hours, I realized I'd built a home out of everything they thought would break me. Wind pushed through the gaps in the window frame, carrying the smell of pine. I placed my palm on the rail I just restored, solid, warm, steady. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Inside, only my breathing filled the space. That was the night I stopped waiting for them to see me. The call came on a Wednesday near noon. I was sanding a window frame, sunlight laying thin golden stripes across the floor. The phone buzzed twice. Then his voice cut through the static, flat, rehearsed. "Randy needs the house more than you do. If you don't transfer it by Friday, we'll take you to court." The word court rang like a crack in glass. I stayed quiet. Dust clung to my wrist, glittering in the light. My breathing stayed calm. He mistook my silence for fear and hung up. Seconds later, Mom called. Her tone was sharp, brittle. "You know what you owe us, Nova. We raised you. Don't make this ugly." Click. The air felt heavier. Wind rattled the windows. I put the phone down beside my mug and stared at the reflection trembling inside it. What I felt wasn't anger, it was recognition. This was the same old rule, now wrapped in legal words. My work belonged to them. Light shifted across the wall. I picked up my chisel and pressed into the wood. Each scrape broke the quiet. Splinter by splinter, the frame gave way. When the dust cleared, sunlight landed on every mark I had carved into that home. I had built everything with my own hands. Now they wanted to take it. I brushed sawdust off my palms, reached for the keys hanging by the door, and closed my hand around the metal until it bit my skin. The keys didn't jingle. Neither did I. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and became their opposition. Julia's office smelled of paper and cold coffee. Sharp, clean, and different. I sat across from her. palms flat on the folder containing 5 years of proof that everything I had was mine alone. She flipped through the documents without speaking, tapping her pen against the table. Then she laughed softly, once then again louder, shaking her head. "So they're threatening to sue you," she said, voice crisp, "for a property that's fully yours." Her laughter filled the room, sharp, precise, cutting through the tight knot of dread I'd carried since the call. I let out a long, slow breath. For the first time someone had laughed with me, not at me. Julia leaned forward. "Let them make the first move," she said. "Then we respond methodically, piece by piece. You have proof." I nodded and opened my folder. Receipts, bank statements, bills, photos of plaster I'd smoothed, walls I'd painted by hand. Every photo, every slip of paper, a testament to my work. She flipped a page and paused. "Keep it organized, digital and printed. Chain of evidence matters more than emotion." Her voice was calm, precise, professional, not pity. Strategy. That night, I began the meticulous work. I labeled folders on my computer. Mortgage, renovations, utilities. Printed copies lined up in brown envelopes across the dining table. I replayed my father's threatening call and saved it under threat recordings. Each click, each label steadied me. By 2 a.m., I sat in the living room, surrounded by stacks of paper and the gentle hiss of the old radiator. Rain tapped against the window. I looked at the house I'd resurrected, the one they'd mocked, and realized I was cataloging more than evidence. I was cataloging my life. The radiator side. Nothing else. A week later, Julia called. "They filed." Her tone was steady. Mine mirrored it. "Good," I said. "Now we respond." 2 days later we met again. Morning light slanted through the blinds, striping the desk with lines of brightness and shadow. Julia handed me a pen. "You'll sign here, counterclaim. Fraud, misappropriation, tax violations." The words were weighty but clear, like glass breaking in the right direction. I signed. "Proof of inheritance theft?" she asked. I handed her another folder. Copies of trust statements, showing funds vanishing the same year Randy got a new car and my parents renovated their kitchen. She scanned it, then looked up. "They left a trail." "They always do," I said. Her smile wasn't warm. It was satisfaction of a professional who knows the system works. "Let the law speak," she said. At home I moved through the house, fingers tracing each surface like a reminder of ownership. The polished doorknobs, the sanded stair rail, the faint scent of varnish near the window. In the kitchen I left one light on, flickering softly. My laptop glowed as I reviewed the final files. Property deed, tax records, statements of ownership. Each document clicked open and shut like a heartbeat. Family messages buzzed in. "You're making this worse. This isn't how things are done. Think of your parents' reputation." I archived them all under a folder labeled noise. Days blended into nights. I documented, verified, prepared. Julia managed subpoenas, the language of battle disguised as civility. I built order. I became fluent in evidence. When discovery notice arrived, I sat at the same kitchen table where I once ate alone, scolded for being too independent. Now it was my command center. Laptop open, color-coded binders stacked, coffee at hand. Every binder gleamed under the light. The most beautiful structure I'd ever built. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the dark window. Same face but shoulders squared, hands steady. No flinching. Power, I realized, wasn't loud. It didn't plead. It was the quiet certainty of truth, daring anyone to challenge it. One evening Julia called. "They're panicking. Trying to settle." "Not yet," I said. "Why?" "Because they still think they can scare me into silence." She was silent for a beat. "Then let them talk." The night before the family dinner, I walked the house once more. Floorboards creaked beneath my steps. I paused at the window I'd repaired months ago, watching the city lights flicker on the glass. Somewhere in that reflection, I saw the woman they never believed I'd become. The chime of keys broke the quiet. I held them, feeling their cool weight. Not just for the doors I locked, but for the ones I'd finally learned to close. By dawn, the documents were packed, neatly labeled, sealed, ready. Outside, pale gray light signaled a clean, unfinished morning. I poured one last cup of coffee. No sugar, no milk. The spoon clinked once against the ceramic. Silence. But this time the quiet was not emptiness. It was preparation. Control. The dining room smelled of lemon polish and staged warmth. Every chair was full, except the one at the end of the table reserved for me. Crystal glasses, folded napkins, the illusion of peace. I entered with Julia beside me, Carlos trailing softly. The click of his briefcase echoed in the still air. My mother's eyes were red, mascara smudged at the edges. "You came," she said, brittle rehearsed. "We thought maybe." "I'm not here for theatrics," I interrupted, calm, measured. "I'm here for closure." My father cleared his throat, sharp as a judge's gavel. "Then let's talk about what you owe the family." Julia's hand smoothed the tablecloth, as if erasing an invisible crease. "Let's," she said evenly, sliding a folder in front of him. The slap of paper on would rang louder than any word. He opened it, lips tightening as his authority slowly unraveled. "These are," he began with a scoff. "Financial records," Julia cut in, "and documentation of misappropriated funds, your daughter's inheritance listed under your name." The room fell utterly still. A fork clattered somewhere on the table. Grace Ree's fiancée lifted her gaze, pale as paper. "What inheritance?" No one answered. Julia flipped another page. "We've included your tax filings as well. The IRS might find them creative." My mother gasped, fingers trembling on her wine glass, making the liquid ripple. Randy shoved back his chair. "This is insane," he barked. "You're twisting the facts." I looked at him, steady. "You spent my trust fund," I said. "And you tried to take my house. That's not twisting, it's math." He laughed, a sound broken by panic. "You can't prove." Carlos slid another envelope across the table. "Bank transfers," he said. "Every cent." The envelope hit the table like a verdict. For a long moment no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Voices overlapping, accusations clattering, chairs scraping against the floor. Julia stayed seated, calm, pin-tapping the folder. When the noise peaked, she spoke softly. "You have 48 hours to drop the lawsuit, return the stolen funds with interest, and amend your taxes. Otherwise, we go federal." My father's face burned red. "You're bluffing." Julia didn't flinch. "We file in the morning." The room emptied of noise, leaving only the hum of the chandelier. I stood, chair legs screeching against the floor. "I gave you a chance," I said. "Not forgiveness." Grace's voice trembled through the silence. "Randy, is this true?" He didn't answer. She stood, removed her ring, and set it on the table. The soft click rang louder than any shout. My mother began to wail, loud, dramatic. My father stared at the documents as though they might ignite. Julia stacked the folders neatly, clinical precision in every movement. Carlos closed his briefcase. I turned to leave. "This isn't revenge," I said softly. "It's accountability." No one followed. Outside, the evening air was sharp and clean. The house glowed through the windows, warm light around people who had mistaken control for love. Julia stepped beside me. "You did what needed to be done," she said. I nodded once. "They wanted a war," I murmured. "Now they have one." Each step across the gravel sounded deliberate, final. From inside, my father called my name, muffled by walls. For the first time, I didn't look back. 6 months later, the house was still again. No lawyers, no calls, no echoes of family names. Just rain on the porch roof and the scent of damp earth rising from the garden. The lawsuit had ended. Repayments had started. Silence replaced the noise they once used to control me. I spent mornings on the steps with coffee, watching sunlight drift across floorboards I had sanded myself. Every mark, every scratch, every nail head gleamed proof of what could not be taken. Mail still came, thick with letters and notices, but each bore my name alone. One afternoon Julia visited. Not in a suit, just quiet confidence. She handed me one final envelope. "All settled," she said. I didn't open it immediately. We listened to rain in silence. When she left, I set it on the counter. That alone was enough. Later, I walked through the garden, soil cool beneath bare feet. The air smelled of wet wood and leaves. Grandma's words came to me. Some roots break concrete just to reach light. I had grown through concrete alone. Through the window, the house glowed faintly against the gray sky. Not flashy, just warm, lived in, safe. I ran my hand along the stair rail, the same one I once leaned on crying over splinters. Smooth. Strong. A single sunbeam caught the old keyring hanging by the door. I held it in my palm. For the first time it felt like proof, not weight. This was survival. No applause, no cheers, just the rain softening on the glass. Justice doesn't roar. It waits quietly in the corners of houses, in the click of a lock finally closing. They thought they could rewrite what I built. But walls remember. Floors remember. I remember. Their silence now is louder than any threat ever was. The house stands, not for revenge but as record. Every nail, every scar, every repaired crack testifies. You don't need to shout to reclaim what's yours. You just have to stop opening the door.